Let's get started. Thanks for joining us, April.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
So April and I were brought together by Dominic Quartuccio, who you may know from a previous episode that I have sent to numerous people who have been like, I'm not sure what to do after this quit. And Dominic gave some great advice. And I just spoke with April a bit about how she thought about her quit. And a lot of the things Dominic talked about doing were things that she naturally did. So if you want to check out that episode after this one, highly recommend it. But Dominic was April's coach when April started her new business. And April is a firecracker, and this conversation is going to be so much fun. I'm looking forward to it.
That is awesome. So happy to be here.
Excellent. All right, we're going to start by taking you back to when you were in sales, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's funny, you are not the first, and I'm sure will not be the last salesperson on my podcast. It seems to be a popular golden handcuffs job to quit.
Yeah, and they like to talk, right? So it's easy.
It is. They're very lovely people and very easy to interview. So stoked to have you on. But tell me a little bit about what was going on in sales and how you first realized you needed to make a quit.
So it seems so counterintuitive because I was having the best year of my sales life, best year earning wise of my life entirely, and was really enjoying it. Great company. Had literally had the experience of the CEO bringing me up in front of hundreds of people and saying, no one has sold like her in the history of the company. This is amazing. I need her to slow down. So this fantastic moment, and then thinking there has to be more. I need to be doing something more. And that was really the impetus for that quit moment. And as I was going through it and thinking about it for a month or so, I was gathering different elements of my job that would end up being my new job without realizing it, spending more time mentoring folks, spending more time in children's charities. And I thought, this is what I want my job to be. I want this to be my day-to-day. I don't want to augment with this. And so started having some conversations with my boss, like, hey, this is going to sound way out of left field, but I think I need to make a move.
And if you could drill down to when you were having those, okay, I know there's something more, was it like a physical sensation? Was it a mental unrest? What led you to come to that realization?
So it was both. That's a great question. So it was a physical sensation right in my gut, right? Just something's not quite right. And then my mind, of course, trying to talk me out of it. Okay, let's think about this. April, this is a great life. This is a great company. You love who you work with. What's going on? But really just knowing I had always had the thought of being an entrepreneur. I just thought it would be a lot later in life. And then just really knowing deep down in my gut, it's actually now. Ready or not, it's time to go.
And that was just because your gut was speaking so loudly to you.
Absolutely. And I think because I was listening to it, I think all of us get messages from our gut and we just don't listen. We talk ourselves out of it. Anyone probably who's on your podcast, right? They're successful in what they're doing. So it seems odd to make a transition.
It often does, but I've always said that that's how every single one of my quits starts, is suddenly I'm dreading a part of whatever it is that I need to quit. And there's that little gut dropping moment, like an email goes off related to the thing. And I'm like, I don't want to deal with this. Or as soon as I get I don't want to deal with it, that's that, and that message generally comes from the gut, unless I'm just overworked and it's something that's super task intensive and I don't have time to deal with, or the mental bandwidth at the time. But if it's, nothing else is going on and an email pops up and I'm like, don't want to deal, that's a pretty clear sign that I'm not going to want to deal with it at any point, and I probably shouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Move
and
along.
I think too, the other thing that was interesting for me, and I see this now with my clients, is that, and I can see it in hindsight, but I didn't know I was doing it at the time, is you're pulling things in that you want for the new role. You don't even realize it. And it may be tiny little steps, a different way you're talking to a colleague, something else you take on, but it's literally tiny little arrows pointing you in the direction of what your dream really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing you just have to pay attention to. It's a lot of people, as we were discussing before we started recording, they know they don't want to be doing what they're doing now, if it's a job related quit, or maybe a hobby related quit, or relationship related quit, but it's like, what's on the other side? And as far as jobs go, that's a really great indicator of where you should head. And that's what Dominic had discussed. It wasn't like, he's like, I'm going to set out on a mission to find my new job. He just said, I'm going to play for a while, and then realized, oh, all of my playing is in the personal development arena.
Right.
And you kind of did the same thing. You're like, every time I am doing something at work that I enjoy more than average, or that I find more fulfilling, it's in the mentoring or charity sector, right?
Absolutely.
So you get this gut feeling and you know you're going to make the quit, and you even tell your boss that you're going to leave in a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
What fears, if any, set in at that point?
Lots of fears. Anyone who says they didn't have fears when they quit, they're lying or far braver than me. But so the first one that came up is, again, this is a great company. This was somewhere I loved working. I was very proud to work, and all these great trajectories that they had out in front of them, and the possible IPO. I wanted to go ring the bell. I had fear of missing out, like FOMO. It was a real thing in the corporate world. And I was like, what am I going to miss if I make this leap? Do I want to stay here to experience all these things and then maybe do this later? And I really battled with that. And the more I felt through it, because I don't think you can think through things like that. The more I felt through it, the more I was like, no, I'm supposed to do it now. This is when I can go out on top, and I'll figure the rest out later.
Yeah. And FOMO is a real thing. And it's funny because I love that you bring up like corporate FOMO, ringing the bell and all those things that, most of us have this, corporate, it sounds so confining in the cubicle life, but there are some benefits. And,
Absolutely.
you're thinking of ringing the bell and the $1,000 dinners, or what other things, the cool corporate retreat you may get to take at some point. There are actual benefits to that life. And it's not probably as easy as some of us might think to just walk away Office Space style.
Absolutely. I would 100% agree. And a lot of times, and I think people aren't, if you're not in the corporate world, you might not know this, it can be harder to leave the people than it is to leave the money or the benefits. And that was certainly the case for me too.
Yeah, understandable. And in the non-corporate world, I just had this thought about somebody who was talking FOMO-wise about like doing a fitness competition. And well, I'm going to miss, the being up on stage and maybe getting the prize and this kind of thing. And just like with ringing the bell, it's a thing, but it's a very short, finite amount of time. Right. And yes, you have that memory, but how much are you willing to sacrifice for that finite period of fun, and the memory that comes with it? How much of your happiness can go for that little moment of satisfaction in the future?
Oh yeah. And that can be tough, right? What did they ultimately decide? No fitness competition?
No fitness competition, because it was a situation where, she was starting a new career in real estate, and to do this fitness competition meant she was going to have to like not eat at all these like real estate mixers she was going to, or with clients at open houses. And it was like, you're going to be not only losing out on like the fun of eating, but the potential like business implications of you just always saying like, I'm going to have my celery stick in my water. Like that's not the atmosphere that you're looking for in this new career. And she realized, the reward is not worth this sacrifice.
Right. That makes complete sense, because the awkwardness that would ensue.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So other fears that you had?
So I think like many entrepreneurs starting out, I had a very real fear of failure. And not just fearing the failing, but the fearing the judgment of having failed, right? And I think what I go back to is we all love a story of someone who pulls themselves up by their bootstraps and they succeed. And, in the last moments, it's shining and amazing. But on a more dark side of it, we also can't wait to see somebody amazing fail sometimes, because that justifies, okay, that's why I'm not putting myself out there. That's why I'm not taking risks. Because if he or she couldn't do it, there's no way I could do it. So I felt the fear of the judgment, the fear of failure. And then I felt almost a responsibility to the folks that I had mentored, that I'd said, look, if you put your mind to it, you can do whatever you want. So I had to be able to walk that walk. And I felt the weight of that, and that it was very important to me to succeed, to inspire other people.
Wow. Yeah, that is an extra dose of I don't know, responsibility or gravitas to your situation, as if people are looking to you as their example, for sure. Did anybody at all express this, a questioning of your choices?
I think everyone kind of raised an eyebrow a little, right? That I worked with, like, you want to go out now? Like you could write your ticket, and we're doing these amazing things, and I don't get it. You seem so happy. And I think that may be the most confusing thing for folks when people quit, is they seem like they were so happy. But a lot of times you are a happy person. You're going to be happy no matter what you're doing. I'm happy, but I'm going to be happier here. And this is the right thing for me. So I think there were raised eyebrows and people who didn't understand, who understood more the longer I was away and they saw what I was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. The thought that you can know what's going on in everybody's mind is what you fight against when you try to explain your way when you're quitting, right? Like,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I realized I was in a good situation here and there was nothing particularly toxic, but that's a very limited view of the world and of your possibilities. If, okay, great, you're making good money and you look happy. Well, yes, but I could be making good money, look happy, and helping others in a greater way. Like they don't necessarily see what you see as your possibilities for the future.
No, not at all. I remember part of what I did to help fund my company was I turned in some options that I had at the other company, right? And I was like, this would be great for startup capital. And everyone was like, April, why would you do that? When it goes public, like it's going to be big money. And I said, you're just assuming that the company will be more successful than I think I will be. I might think I'm a better investment. And that dumbfounded some people, but I really believed that.
I love that. I love that response. Like, you think they're going to be doing better than I am? Like, it's so funny because it's the unspoken lack of confidence in you, that you were like, nope, I'm confident in me. It doesn't really matter what anybody else is saying. That's amazing. I love that. So how did you end up conquering these fears and making the leap?
So I did some really deep work. We talked about pulling in Dominic. I pulled in some other resources to really face that fear and understand what was driving it, where it was coming from, and really not learn to live with fear and do it anyway, but get to the point where you have really resolved it so much that it is not in my atmosphere. There are things that I do today that are crazy. We have talked about previously, I went to Puerto Rico and lived and helped set up a FEMA project, had never done anything FEMA related in my life, but I had no fear of failure because I was either going to win or I was going to learn, or I'd do a little of both, which is exactly what happened. So now being able to go into anyone's business who may have tons of fears around their business, emotional related, or, fiscally, or any of those things, and say, look, no, we don't even work in the realm of fear. I'm going to show you how. And then we're going to make all your dreams come true.
That's genius. I love that. Don't do it in the face of fear. Take fear out of your atmosphere.
Absolutely.
That is good. That is very good. You'd said something about dealing with the underlying stressors behind the fears.
Mm-hmm.
We were chatting about that a little bit before we started. Can you elaborate on that just a bit?
Absolutely. So I think sometimes with any fear that you have of failure, it stems from something else, whether it's something else that happened earlier in your life, or I like to say a lot of times, right, fear is not rational, just like feelings aren't rational. They're irrational, they'd be thoughts. So sometimes it can come from something completely benign that was really big to you at the time. I'll use an example of a dog. Have you ever seen a grown dog that every time they see a broom, they bark at it like it's ready to attack them? So probably a broom fell over on them when they were a puppy. My fears were very much like that. I'd been hit with a broom when I was a puppy, and I'd been afraid of it for the rest of my life.
I love that. So once you get back to the figuring out the root, then you can deconstruct it, and then the fear just naturally. I'm making a motion nobody in the podcast.
Dissipate. That was good. That felt like dissipate to me.
Yes, okay, exactly. This is why I have a YouTube channel, if you would like to see these strange hand gestures.
I am much better by video. Oh, and in case anyone is listening just to the podcast, Lynn Marie's really hot. So if you're not watching it on video, you're doing yourself a disservice.
I love April. We just met. We're going to be BFFs. There's no question.
Awesome.
You're so fun. Okay, so you've gone ahead. You've decided you're going to make the change. You've conquered your fears. What logistics did you have to get in order?
So there were logistics on the business side, right? I notified all my clients personally. I hand selected the team that took over for me with everyone, whether they be a prospect or a client, because that really mattered to me. And I always think of these relationships, even when you leave companies, as lifelong relationships. And that could sound a little cheesy or hokey, but you never know when you're going to run back into someone. And I always want to treat them like we're going to be working together for the rest of our lives. So there was a lot of that. And there was a lot of, I'm going to work as hard on my last day as I did any other day. I'm not taking off early. I'm making sure this is taken care of. However, from a new business, new life perspective, I purposely didn't do anything. And I didn't do it because you can get caught in fear. And I knew at that time, because fear was a real thing for me, and thinking I'm not prepared enough, I'm not ready enough, I'm scared. So I burnt the boats in the sense that I'm going to make this leap without knowing what I'm doing. For sure, with all of this new stuff, I will figure that out and start that adventure tomorrow.
Ooh, I like that. And you clearly had prepared enough that you were going to be financially okay if nothing happened in the first month or so.
Oh, absolutely. I had planned, you know what, that's a lie. I had not planned. I had been very fortunate in how life had gone for me. So I knew that I could afford to take the time that I needed to be able to have a really good offering in the marketplace and not just say, hey, I need some money. Can somebody pay me to wash the dishes?
Yes, yes. I've been reading a book called Quitter by John Acuff, I believe is how you pronounce it. But he's always saying that not quitting your day job is the best way to make sure that your next job is quality and the thing you actually want. And yours is similar, because what he means by not quitting your day job is don't put yourself in some dire financial straits so that, like you said, you don't have to take that, fry cook position just to pay your rent. As long as you're in a financially stable position, that is going to be significantly advantageous for your next step, so that you can ensure that you are taking only the jobs that are going to fulfill that higher need, which was the reason you quit in the first place.
Absolutely.
And how did you actually enact the exit? Preparing, like, you said you made sure that the teams knew everything was in place.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, my clients, right, and helped hand select the folks that were going to be working, because I felt like my clients were like my babies, and they weren't babies, but I cared about them and I cared about how that was handled. I literally wrote out steps for things that I did that I thought were different than the way other people did. So they had it to reference. And it was an open exit in the sense that I was like, look, if you have a question, if you have something you can't find, anyone from the company, anyone from the client, absolutely, they can reach out to me. And my company was fantastic because they were very transparent. April's going to start a new venture. I think it's way easier to leave a company when you're going to do something totally different. Nobody takes that personal, right? You're not going to the other software provider. And just made sure that everyone felt like they could reach out to each other, ask questions, do whatever they needed to do, which that was very important to me. It felt like a really healthy breakup. Like, you can still bring the dog to visit. We're still friends. I'll call your mom on her birthday, that kind of thing.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And you're absolutely right with what you said before. You absolutely never know when some relationship you had in one life is going to come back in a next life. I've seen it come back decades later. People that, especially with social media, you can re-find each other so far in the future. Just somebody popped up on my LinkedIn today who I had not seen in over 10 years. And I was like, oh, how's she doing? And I'm like, oh, look, you've got to quit, little things like that continue to be a reason to never, like, slam the door shut, unless that's what you're trying. Like, slamming the door shut's never what I mean. But we had Nate on, and he had talked about closing the door and locking it, but for your own purposes. So you don't, like, kind of take the easy road and just go back into it because that would have been easier. But relationship wise, don't ever lock it, or don't slam it shut, or, burn any bridges on the way out, because you're absolutely right. Those are things worth maintaining.
Yeah, and mates is kind of like the burn the boats, right? And the analogy has been attributed to so many people. Julius Caesar, Cortez going into Mexico, but it's, the guys are freaking out about the war. So the leader is like, all right, so I'm going to burn the boats. So we either win or we all die. So let's just make it, that we can't backtrack like that. And I think that's more along the lines of what he was talking about, which I completely agree with.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything about your quit or any advice or along any of these lines that I have not asked you?
I would say this: people that are considering it, right, who are drawn to your podcast because they're like, could this work for me? Could this be what I do? What I would say to you is this: is you're never going to get any of the time back. So every day that you spend wondering if you should go and live your dream is a day you could have been living your dream. And I would say, make your plan, but do it, because you never regret the stuff that you do. You regret the stuff that you don't do.
Yes. I love that beautiful ending. And since you do lovely things for people, would you tell people where they can find you and your company?
Absolutely. So my company is called Driven Outcomes, and you can find me on social media anywhere. My name is April Shprintz, and I'm the only one in the US.
Very nice. And just let us know what Driven Outcomes does, should people be interested.
Absolutely. So I am a business accelerator. So I come in, and whether you're looking to build a sales organization, turn around a company in trouble, or really get your startup off the ground extremely fast and in the right way, I can make it happen. None of your dreams are too big, and we'll do it faster than you think.
I love your confidence. It just, like, flies through the screen. We're doing this on Zoom, but April, I really appreciate you chatting with us today and all the great advice you've shared.
Absolutely. It was such a pleasure to meet you, Lynn Marie. Thank you.
Well, for everybody else out there, until next time, happy quitting. That's it. Yay!
You could really leave this in it. Like, I like that. That did something for me.